All right, strap in. We're about to have a real philosophical discussion about the nature of time. You might have gone your whole life not really stopping to think about the nature of time, because it's just kind of one of those things that you experience every day. It's normal. I mean, time passes, things happen, and maybe you don't have enough time in your day to sit and think about time, right? You might have heard someone say that time is an illusion, and you probably didn't think really anything of it. I know I didn't at first. It's kind of one of those things that you just hear thrown around, but there actually might be a good argument for time not being real. And that sounds so strange as someone who experiences time every day. Like, how can it not be real? How would anything change? How would anything happen if it's not real? So let's take a look. So in this video, I'm going to dive into what exactly it means to say that time isn't real by looking at one particular argument made by a philosopher named McTaggart. My name is Ryan. I'm a third-year math and philosophy major at a university. Last semester, I took a course in metaphysics, and part of the curriculum was talking about time. And we actually read this essay by McTaggart and kind of broke it down. And it was one of the things that really stuck with me from that class. And so I'd like to sit down today and kind of explain some of the topics to you guys and kind of get your ideas about time. Right now, I'm really trying to grow my channel. So if you're feeling particularly kind today, go like and subscribe. I plan to make a lot more content like this in the future. And with your support, these videos will only get better. All right, and with that, let's get into it. So really what we're going to be looking at today is this argument by this prominent figure in the philosophy of metaphysics. His name is McTaggart, and he kind of has this argument that time isn't real. But in order to really dig into what this guy is saying, we need to first understand a couple of different views and concepts in the metaphysics of time. So there are two big ideas of how time works. They're called A theory and B theory. And A theory sees time as like flowing or passing, and it's mainly concerned with the classification of events based on whether they're in the past, present, or future. On the other hand, we have B theory, which is primarily concerned with the distinction between earlier than and later than. A theory classifies time using the A series, which uses distinctions of past, present, and future. And B theory uses the B series to classify time, which only has distinctions of earlier than and later than. So any event is earlier than and later than or simultaneous to another event in the B series. For example, the moment in which I'm uttering this sentence comes earlier than the moment in which you hear it. And in the B series, events are eternal because they don't change from being past, present, or future. They stay in this earlier than, later than order forever. It was always the case that I fell off my bike last summer, and it always will be the case that happened. And consequently, I'm just as real as my 10-year-old self in the view of the B theory. Just simply happen to occupy different spaces in time. Just like how if you're in Texas, California is still real, even though it's just at a different place in space. But let's get to McTaggart. In order to break down this argument, we're going to go premise by premise until we reach our conclusion, which is that time isn't real. So starting with the first premise, we have premise 1. Time is real only if real change occurs. So our first premise is time is real only if real change occurs. This is something McTaggart just kind of takes to be true. He doesn't really give a whole lot of justification for it other than intuitively, time wouldn't pass if there was no change. So for example, suppose you were in a universe and nothing was changing. It wouldn't seem like any time was occurring. I mean, you wouldn't even be able to perceive time because your cells would not be moving, your blood would not be changing. So this is the kind of idea that you need change for time. A world in which nothing changes would be a timeless universe. I'm not sure how I feel about this claim personally. I think it makes sense. It doesn't feel unnatural, but to me, it's kind of like a chicken or the egg situation where like, do we need time for change or do we need change for time? But McTaggart says that we need change for time. So again, premise one is time is only real if real change occurs. And that brings us to premise 2. Real change occurs only if the A series exists. So we kind of figure this out by process of elimination. Basically, suppose we accept the B series to be the model of time, right? So every event has this earlier or later than kind of relation to one another, but they're static, they're fixed in their place forever, eternally. Then the only way that something could change is if an event were to go from existing to not existing. But we don't allow that in the B series. The only way that change could theoretically occur in the B series is if one event stops and another begins, right? But the issue with that is that if an event stops, then it must cease to be. And if an event begins, it must begin to be. But we don't allow this because the B series has everything be eternal. Every event is eternally in its place. So there can't be any real change in the B series. Now you might say, okay, well, one event becomes another. But if one event becomes another, so if event, say, A becomes event B, at some point in the process of becoming event B, event A would have had to cease to exist. It would have had to stop being event A in order to become event B. Again, we don't allow this. It has to be eternally event A. So, again, we won't have change. But then what could change about an event without it ceasing to be itself? Well, the answer is that it changes from being future to present to past. And that's A-series language. Therefore, we need the A-series. Another way to look at this is to imagine a fence. Maybe some of the pickets are red and some of the pickets are white. You wouldn't say between a red and a white picket that there was any change, only a difference in color of the pickets. There isn't any change occurring between them, there's only a difference. The B-series is like this fence. Nothing changes, there's only difference between events. However, you would say that something changed if maybe one of the pickets cracked. But in order for that to happen, we would have needed time. We would have needed something to pass from the future to the present to the past, i.e. the cracking of the wood. That's the A-series. We need the A-series in order for there to be real change. I just wanted to say really quickly again, please consider liking and subscribing. I'm trying to grow my small little channel. So it would really help me out. So before we move on to premise 3, there's something kind of interesting that I wanted to bring up that McTaggart says. McTaggart claims that in some way the B-series is secondary to the A-series, or the B-series needs the A-series in order to exist. And this is kind of an interesting claim. Basically, he says that the ordering in the B-series, earlier than and later than, is not enough to distinguish the past from the future. And you can think of it this way. If I'm given 3 letters, say A, B, C, and I know that B comes after A and before C, and C comes after B and A comes before B, I could order them left to right, A, B, C, or I could order them right to left, C, B, A. Who's to say which is the correct way to orient it? And this is why he says the B-series is secondary to the A-series. McTaggart thinks that the B-series needs the A-series in order to have this kind of orientation. The A-series has this natural kind of flow from future to present to past. Or in other words, it distinguishes the future from the past. And so he argues that the B-series is kind of parasitic on the A-series because it needs this distinction, this arrow of time. Personally, I think that the B-series can have an arrow of time without the A-series. I think that things like maybe the direction of entropy change could serve as a fine arrow of time to put on the B-series. Okay, so now we get to the final premise, premise 3, which is that the A-series does not exist. And it's like, whoa, 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 wait. We've just been talking about this A-series that we need this entire time. But we're going to talk about why it actually leads to a bunch of contradictions and it really can't exist. And the argument is kind of subtle because the language gets a little confusing. Intuitively, an event cannot be in the present, the past, and the future all at once, right? It can't have all 3 of these properties. These properties are incompatible. We can't have all 3. Yet somehow, every event does have all 3. If me reading this script is in the present, for me, then it's in your past. And when I was writing it, it's in the future. So somehow this event has all 3. And well, you might say, well, oh, it only has past in the past and present in the present and future in the future. It only has them one at a time. But when you say that, you admit some kind of like meta time. You need like a secondary time. You say past in the past or future in the present or something like that. If me writing this script has been past and will be future, then we are referring to some sort of time outside of the time that me writing the script took place in. We need some kind of external time, another A-series to talk about when and how these things change. And that's fine, but that doesn't fix our problem. So again, in order to fix it, we might use another A series, which would get even more complicated linguistically, believe me. But maybe create another A series to try and get us out of this mess. We have to keep creating more and more and more A series just forever, because we would never rectify our problem. We would never fix it. We would still be talking about events that have been past and will be future, and it breaks down. We end up with this, what McTaggart calls infinite cascade of A series, and it just doesn't make sense to have that. And so the A series is kind of inconsistent. Another kind of related thing that I wanted to talk about is the quote-unquote flow of time. It doesn't make sense to say time flows either. We think of events as flowing from future to present to past, but what exactly is it flowing with respect to? When a river flows, it flows with respect to the riverbank. The riverbank is still. But time flows with respect to what exactly? And further, what rate does time flow at? Like, is it a second per second? Does that even make sense? You see what I'm getting at? It just doesn't make sense to say that time flows. The analogy kind of breaks down. And the idea is, because the A series is inconsistent, it must not exist. Now all of these dominoes that we've set up with our premises kind of fall over. Real change only occurs. Time is real only if real change occurs. Real change occurs only if the A series exists. And like we just said, the A series can't exist. Therefore, time isn't real. That's kind of heavy. I think that this is certainly an interesting argument. However, there are some places where I'm really just not sure. Like the whole, you need change for time. Again, it feels like a chicken or the egg situation. Do we need change for time, or do we need time for change? Which came first? What's more essential? Personally, I don't mind the conclusion that the A series doesn't exist, because I find myself more partial to the B series. I don't really have a well thought out argument for this, but my gut kind of tells me that the change we experience through time is really just a kind of biological symptom. It's a way we intuit the difference between moments, and not an objective reality. Again, I have no real defense prepared for that. What do you think about all of this? I want to see you guys start a debate in the comments. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. I really appreciate your time. Please consider liking and subscribing to help me grow my channel and support me in my degree. If you have a little extra cash lying around, please consider buying me a coffee at the link in the description. It'll definitely help me out to make more videos like this. And again, thanks for watching.